Hello, all you denizens of podcast land out there. Welcome to the latest episode of the Fortress of Rock. It is August the 11th, 2023, episode 104. Glad, as always, to have you aboard. Winding down the summer, but we are still in the midst of concert season here on the Fortress of Rock. In segment 2 this week, you will get my review of Matchbox 20, Packed House, live. We like to call it Deer Creek. Of course, it's now a corporate shill for Ruoff Mortgage, the Ruoff Music Center outside of Indianapolis in Noblesville, Indiana. But that has to wait for segment 2. Because, first and foremost, as always, we lead off with news of the world, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen. Lots of new music to discuss. Let's get into it. Dokken is back. We get to rock with Dokken again. Don Dokken and his current crew. Of course, George Lynch, Jeff Pilson, and Wild Mick Brown are long gone. But Don Dokken keeps his band alive with the new album, Heaven Comes Down. Yes, referencing an earlier classic Dokken song from the 80s. Heaven Comes Down is out October the 27th. Even though it does reference an old song, it is a collection of brand new tracks. The first of which, Fugitive, is out now. I will tell you this. A little sneak peek. Not going to review it this week, but I've listened to it a couple times. The guitar work is phenomenal. Great guitar riff, great hook, great solo. The lyrics and the vocals make me worry about Don Dokken if he's not on his last leg. Let's put it that way. But full review coming next week for Fugitive by Dokken on the Fortress of Rock. Once again, Heaven Comes Down, the new album from Dokken, out October the 27th. Night Ranger. They're going down this road. They're going down this path. We recently saw this with Def Leppard. In the past, we've seen it with Metallica, with Kiss. Night Ranger has hooked up with the Contemporary Youth Orchestra. 40 years and a night. Of course, celebrating Night Ranger's 40th anniversary. We just told you last week here on the Fortress how awesome Night Ranger still is live. But now let's see how it works with a little bit of a twist, with the Contemporary Youth Orchestra behind them. The collaboration is out October the 20th. The first taste of it, You Can Still Rock in America, is out now. I will say this. After the unbelievably disappointing effort that Def Leppard put out here recently with Drastic Symphonies, at least Night Ranger is smart enough to know let's not go too far. So I'm not going to give you a full review of the song. You know I don't like reviewing live versions, remixes, alternate versions. So here you go. I will tell you what I took away listening to this latest version live with the Contemporary Youth Orchestra of You Can Still Rock in America. The orchestra prominent a little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end, and it's perfect. They emphasize the parts they should. They leave the band alone through the meat of the song. This is how it should be. The orchestra should not overwhelm the song. The band should not change the song all that much. You use the orchestra to accentuate the parts they should. And the thing with Night Ranger that they've got working in their favor is with the keyboards. They've always used the keyboards along with the dual guitar attack. Keyboards basically are just an electronic symphony, if you get my drift. So you bring in an orchestra to play those keyboard parts, to back up those keyboard parts. I can see that. I can see that working. I can see that being more of a stronger backbone for those particular parts of the songs. I am going to be very intrigued to hear how Sister Christian comes out, backed by the Contemporary Youth Orchestra. Once again, 40 Years and a Night. Night Ranger with the Contemporary Youth Orchestra live CD DVD combo pack. So we might be looking at a very good value for your money on October the 20th. Van Halen. I'm still waiting for them to open the vaults, and I know it's not going to happen for quite some time. Of course, Wolfgang Van Halen focused on Mammoth WVH review of Mammoth II coming next segment. But Van Halen, The Collection 2 comes out October the 6th. 5 LPs, 5 CDs. Again, nothing here to shock or surprise you. You get the 4 remastered Sammy Hagar era albums with a 5th disc LP of rarities, quote unquote rarities. Now, if you're a Van Halen fanatic like me, these songs come as no surprise to you. Crossing Over, a B-side, the only time Van Halen had a B-side on a single that was not another album track, will be featured on this Rarities 5th disc / album. You'll also get the 2 tracks from the Twister soundtrack. Again, nothing you haven't heard before. Personally, though, you guys know Humans Being was a perfect way for the Hagar era to end. It almost made up for the travesty of Can't Stop Loving You on balance. And then we get the 3 songs that appeared on Best of Both Worlds, including Up for Breakfast. Again, songs that most Van Halen fans have or have heard. So this is not delving into the vault. There's nothing really new here to shock or surprise you. This is another money grab. Sorry, it is. I'm not going to go out and buy this, and I'm a Van Halen fanatic. I'm not going out and buying this. I don't think I have Crossing Over anywhere in my collection. I know, shocking. But otherwise, I have all these songs. I have the songs from Twister. I have the songs from Best of Both Worlds. And of course, I have the 4 Sammy Hagar era albums. So why am I going to shell out $50 for this? I do hope newer fans come in and buy this. If it'll get them into the fold, if it'll get them to become Van Halen fans, even though, as Wolfgang Van Halen recently said, and again, not a shocker, he says Van Halen is no more. Well, no duh. That's why we turn to you and Mammoth WVH to carry on the legacy in your own way. So, if you do not have the Van Halen, Sammy Hagar era albums, check out The Collection 2 from Van Halen, coming out October the 6th, available on LP or CD. I'm going to throw a little curveball at you here. I've been thinking about a new feature on the podcast. I don't know if I could pull it off every week, but I rediscovered a couple old albums this week. Now, the first, not shocking, I guess, I saw an article on ultimateclassicrock.com about Sammy Hagar. I mean, they're ranking all the Sammy Hagar Van Halen songs. They're ranking all of Sammy Hagar's albums. And I'm a sucker for a good list. But when I read the article about the Sammy Hagar albums, I realized I never had Montrose, the original Montrose. Of course, they only put out 2 albums with Sammy Hagar as lead vocalist, Montrose and Paper Money. Never had either one of them because they came in just a little bit before I got into music. Yes, that is how old Sammy Hagar is. Early mid-70s stuff. And I, of course, really did not come into rock and roll until Alive 2 from Kiss, and of course, Van Halen. But I went out and got Montrose on CD because that's what I still do. I'm a stubborn, get off my lawn old man. So I bought the Montrose CD, but I also dug up another old album online that I remember loving. I don't know if I had it on LP. I think it was LP. I don't think it was cassette. It was definitely not CD. So my idea for this possible future feature here on the Fortress of Rock is lost gems, something like that. Undiscovered, lost gems. Albums that we've all forgotten that were actually really damn good. So now Montrose doesn't fit that. Everybody knows Montrose. That album is a classic. But I think this album fits the bill. Now let me start off by saying Brian Setzer, former frontman for the Stray Cats, has a new album coming out on September the 15th called The Devil Always Collects. And this was the impetus when I saw this for me to have a little spark in my rock and roll brain and go back. Looked on Spotify, of course, listened to the album again, went, downloaded the digital version of it, burned myself a CD. Brian Setzer, right after leaving the Stray Cats, put out a phenomenal, I mean phenomenal, solo album called The Knife Feels Like Justice. And again, still debating whether or not to make this an ongoing feature on the Fortress, but I will say this. If you have time, and if you liked the Stray Cats, if you like Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, this is not the Brian Setzer Orchestra here, okay? This is more I don't know, storytelling backed by some Midwestern rock. The best comparisons I have are probably bands you don't know. The Rainmakers, Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, the Refreshments, but a little more serious than the Refreshments. Again, check out Brian Setzer's new album, The Devil Always Collects, in stores on September the 15th, of course, on Amazon, wherever you buy your music. But I completely recommend you go back in time, Pandora, Spotify. Check out The Knife Feels Like Justice from Brian Setzer. Great, great album. Metallica has begun the M72 tour. Started off in New Jersey 1 week ago. Last Friday when we were taping episode 103. Of course, support for the first night was Pantera and the aforementioned Mammoth WVH. Seen Metallica, very good show. Not the best ever, I'm sorry. Not the best ever. I still think the venue was to blame. I do not like the sound in the Gainbridge Fieldhouse down in Indianapolis, but this tour logistically doesn't work for me. Monetarily doesn't work for me, but I kind of admire what they're doing with the no repeat weekends. So hopefully you have your tickets to see Metallica here in 2023 and in 2024 as the M72 tour has officially begun. Now, if you're paying attention to the news, you have read about these very destructive wildfires in Hawaii. And unfortunately, it has affected, obviously, not only the vast majority of the community on Maui, but for our purposes, Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac had, by all accounts, a really nice, well-reviewed restaurant that was destroyed by these wildfires. Now, again, I am not trying to overlook the human cost, the property cost otherwise. This is a show about rock and roll. So, bear that in mind when I point out that Mick Fleetwood, a rich man, lost his restaurant. And I know, at this point in time where we're recording episode 104, we're looking at approximately 55 people who have died from these wildfires. So, of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to all of the friends, family members for those 55 people. We also have to look at, as we close out News of the World, a couple of deaths in the world of rock and roll. We'll start off with John Gosling, who played keyboards for the Kinks in a pretty solid era for them, 1970 through 1978. But then, of course, the big loss in the rock and roll world of the week, unfortunately, was not John Gosling, was not Mick Fleetwood's Hawaii restaurant, but Robbie Robertson. Of course, frontman for the band. The band, of course, was Bob Dylan's backing band. And Robbie Robertson, we talk about Brian Setzer here earlier, having some great solo work. Robbie Robertson had some phenomenal solo albums. Really, really good stuff. I'll admit, I could care less about the band. I could care less about The Last Waltz. You guys know how I feel about Bob Dylan, but Robbie Robertson on his own had some really intriguing music. But he has left us, so thoughts and prayers to the band, Bob Dylan, everybody connected to Robbie Robertson. And we'll go ahead and close out News of the World on that somber note. But coming up next, a big time, full, nearly 30-minute segment in breakdown devoted to Matchbox 20 Live, Mammoth II from Mammoth WVH, and a new song from one of my personal favorites, Wilco. So you don't want to miss that. Quick promo break. And yes, at some point in time, I will update the promos. Work, kid in college, life gets in the way. But reviews, live stuff, album, song, coming up next. I'm the Maestro. I'll be right back. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Fortress of Rock podcast with me, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Of course, that was segment 1, the news of the world, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen, where we look back at the past week in rock and roll and all the news and all the controversies that you deserve to know about. Next up is the heart of the show, the meat and potatoes breakdown, where we are going to review all the new songs, all the new albums, all the new concert tours, the shows that I've seen personally. Stay tuned for that. Of course, we're now available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Hang out, kids. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Fortress of Rock. I'm the Maestro Kevin Crane, episode 104, August the 11th, 2023. It is time for the core, the meat and potatoes, the segment that you care about the most, that I care about the most. New music, concert reviews, song reviews. It is time for Breakdown, our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So, of course, as we are in the midst of the Festival of Rock, 6 straight weekends of concerts, some weekends with 2 or 3 shows. More on that and wrap it up at the end in segment 4. But this week, we review Matchbox 20 live at the Ruoff Music Center, Noblesville, Indiana, just to the northeast of Indianapolis, Indiana. My personal favorite venue. Sound is always good. I will say in this case, we have some stories from this show as opposed to the last couple. And you wouldn't think you'd get stories like this from a show with Matchbox 20 and his opening act, Matt Nathanson. Of course, it was supposed to be 3 years ago before the pandemic hit, the Wallflowers, which would have been incredible. And Matt Nathanson joked about that on multiple occasions. But first, let me tell you the story, and then we get into the music. So, I've mentioned time and time again, I've tried these lawn passes this year. Live Nation offers at some of their outdoor venues lawn passes. You pay a larger price up front, but you have fast pass access to the entire season with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, reasonable exceptions, in my opinion. I think this year it was Kids Bop Live and Noel Gallagher and Garbage. Everything else, the lawn pass covers, including upcoming shows featuring Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins. We've got ZZ Top and Leonard Skinner. This weekend is Godsmack. I mean, it's just a great, great value for the money if you can deal with sitting in the lawn. So, after the first couple shows, of course, Foreigner, Loverboy, and Party Gras, everything's good. Having a great time, driving down, driving back, it's all good. So for Matchbox 20, we set up in our usual spot. Very good, very nice sight lines, very happy with our spot. For Matchbox 20, again, I will stress this. We're not talking about Godsmack this weekend. We're not talking about Disturbed or Pantera. We end up having a bunch, I'm not kidding you, a bunch of exotic dancers and their boyfriends hanging out next to us and around us. And of course, they are rude beyond belief, especially the dancers. So they are twerking, they are bumping and grinding, they're bumping into me, they're bumping into my friends, they're spilling beer on the lawn chair of the person in front of us, a very nice lady, very sweet, nice lady, who actually, when she was setting up the lawn chairs in front of us for her and her boyfriend or husband, looked back at me and said, is this okay? Is this going to block your view? I'm like, no, you guys are fine. You're allowed to have low level lawn chairs. Sweet, nice, wonderful woman. The exact opposite of the dirty women who were dancing and grinding next to me throughout the entire Matt Nathanson show. Now, luckily, I won't get into more detail. There were some other things that happened, but I am not at liberty to discuss that. I will say that luckily they moved on, or they lost their way, or they were too drunk to figure out how to get back to the spot next to us. So luckily they were gone by one or two songs in to Matchbox 20, so we were able to enjoy the main event, the headliner. It was a packed house. There was no way we could move. So that being said, you guys, obviously, I know you've got stories about weird, wild, wacky things that have happened at concerts you've been to. Feel free to post them on Facebook, on our Facebook page, and tell me about the weird, wild, wacky, gross, bizarre things that have happened to you at concerts. But let's get into the music. So, Matt Nathanson was the opening act. He was okay. I didn't know him. I know some people, younger people who know. He had a big hit song, I think, back in 2010. His music kind of sounds like a minor league Counting Crows. Not quite as sharp, not quite as witty as Adam Duritz. Now, I will say this. When he's not playing his music and he's talking to the audience and joking around, he is very funny and very charismatic. I'll give him that. Very fun guy to listen to in between songs. But then we get into the main event, as I mentioned, Matchbox 20. They gave us our money's worth after a lot of people waited 3 years, held on to their tickets for 3 years for this show. Now, luckily, we held off. We were going to wait to the last minute to buy lawn seats. We figured we'll get lawn seats. Shouldn't be a problem. Let's just hold off. And luckily, we did, because then COVID hit. So now the lawn pass comes into play. We get to see him anyway. 2-hour show, 24 songs. Again, they gave us everything they had. Their guitar player, of course, is from the Indianapolis area, so he got to talk a little bit about living in Indiana, acknowledged the people of Noblesville and Indianapolis. Always kind of cool when somebody from the area, from Indiana, comes back. And it happens more often than you would think. Indiana is actually pretty cool when it comes to rock and roll history. If you look at Axl Rose, if you look at John Mellencamp, there are plenty of people who started off in this state. Now, Matchbox 20 played 5 songs off their recent album, Where the Light Goes. I will give you a set list rundown, but it's going to be very quick. As I mentioned, 24 songs. Can't go into detail on each and every one, but they open with Friends, which is the opening track on Where the Light Goes. Not one of my favorites, but worked a little bit better in a live setting. Then we get How Far We've Come. Real World, of course, one of the greats. Disease, the first single off the latest album. Wild Dogs, Running in a Slow Dream. Then we start getting a little bit off the beaten path. Not a lot, a little bit, with She's So Mean and All I Need. We come back to the latest album with Queen of New York City, a song that is really growing on me, that I'm really liking. Rob Thomas is the master of the mid-tempo ballad. Hand Me Down, If You're Gone. Now, If You're Gone was done with just Rob Thomas and the guitar player. So kind of a stripped down, semi-acoustic version of If You're Gone. Then we get one of my personal favorites, Mad Season. Awesome. Don't get me wrong. Arguably the best song on the new album, Where the Light Goes. Then we get a little bit more off the beaten path for the next few. These Hard Times, The Way, Downfall, with Knocking on Heaven's Door kind of woven into the middle of it for just a little bit, not a full cover. And then it's just, for the most part, hit after hit after hit to wrap up the show. We go with Bent, Back to Good, another one of my personal favorites, Long Day. And then they closed out the initial set with another song off the new album, this one being Rebels. Encore time. I'm starting to sweat it out because they've still got one more song that I love they haven't played yet. So we get 3 a.m. And then we get Unwell. And I'm still going, where is my song? Where is my song? I got Mad Season and I got Long Day, but there's one more I need. And I finally got it at the end of the first encore. Whew. Bright Lights. Bright Lights again proves, as I just mentioned a minute ago, Rob Thomas is the master of the mid-tempo ballad. Bright Lights is such a phenomenal song, in my opinion. I just love it. Baby, 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 when all your love is gone, who will save me? Just unbelievable. Just a ridiculously good song. Finally got that, so it was all gravy after that. They came back out for one more song. In the second encore, did a cover song, which I always love. If you've covered all the bases in terms of your catalog, throw a cover in there. Hootie and the Blowfish do it beautifully. Matchbox 20 comes in and does a cover of Simple Minds' Don't You Forget About Me. Very faithful, very solid rendition of the classic from Simple Minds. So again, discounting the idiocy of people around you at a concert, the drunk, the stupid, the ignorant, the rude. Very, very solid, great show from Matchbox 20. This is the second time I've seen them, and the first time was about 20 years ago. So, very, very solid recommendation. If it's going to have to be the next time, of course, the tour is over now. This was the second to last show on the Slow Dreams tour. But if and when they go back out on the road again, I would highly recommend you check out Matchbox 20. Let's move on to the featured album review of the week. And you guys know I have been waiting on this album for a long time. Not quite as long as with some other bands. Other bands make you wait 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years. We've talked recently about Extreme. Coming up next week, The Hives. We're talking about decade plus 7 years with Queens of the Stone Age. So, when I say this is a long-awaited album review, I'm only talking about roughly a year and a half, 2 years. But it is the second album from Wolfgang Van Halen and Mammoth WVH, the album, Mammoth II. So, of course, as always here on the Fortress of Rock, we will go track by track, 10 songs. We've reviewed 3 of these songs already. I think I'm All Right kind of slipped in just under the radar. We figured we'd wait until we got the full album for I'm All Right. So, we've already reviewed Another Celebration at the End of the World. We've already reviewed Like a Pastime. And, of course, Take a Bow. So, we'll mix those reviews in quickly among the other new songs. Mammoth 2 starts off with Right. Great, nice, opening, intense song. Now, I will say this right off the bat about Mammoth 2. This is not going to match the first album. I didn't expect it to. I hoped it could, especially after I heard Another Celebration at the End of the World. But Right at least comes out of the gate strong, gives me hope that, yes, maybe Mammoth 2 could be as great as the first album. But then, of course, things get tricky with song 2, Like a Pastime. Again, one of the songs we've previously reviewed. I'll say this, it sounds better sandwiched in between 2 great songs. It seems to fit here at the second slot on the album sequence. So, Like a Pastime, a little bit better fitting into the album as a whole than it did on its own as a single. And then, as I say, it's sandwiched between 2 great songs, Right, and then, of course, I cannot heap enough praise on Another Celebration at the End of the World. Still, I've listened to that song probably 100 times already. It is not growing old. It is still in contention for Song of the Year. And that was the song that made me believe, along with the leadoff track, Right, we could be getting an album equal to the first Mammoth WVH LP. Then things kind of briefly drop in quality just a bit. Miles Above Me is okay. One of those songs that I'll say, I'll take it. It's better than most of the garbage out there, but not quite up to the level that the high bar that Mammoth WVH and Wolfgang Van Halen have set. Now, of course, we reviewed track 5, Take a Bow, previously, the guitar solo, which Wolfie plays on his dad's old Frankenstein guitar through his old Hammond amp, is scary because of how it sounds. It sounds like Eddie Van Halen brought back from the grave. Now, the song as a whole, pretty good, but the guitar solo just elevates it to another level. So we're halfway through now, and everything for the most part pretty good. Maybe slightly below the level of the first album. Tracks 6 and 7 don't ruin things. They keep the momentum going for the most part. Optimist. Track 6 is pretty good. Track 7, the fourth single, I alluded to this, released just before the album came out. Video is out there featuring Wolfie's mom, Valerie Bertinelli. I'm All Right. Great song. Some Roadhouse piano featured in there. So we're 7 songs in right now, and it's really going pretty well. Problem is, the last 3 songs kind of let things down. Erase Me, track 8, Waiting, track 9, and Better Than You, track 10. What Wolfgang Van Halen is doing, the trap he's falling into, is that now the songs are starting to sound the same. If we were to take the 5 songs, Miles Above Me, Optimist, Erase Me, Waiting, and Better Than You, take those 5 out, set them aside compared to Right, Like a Pastime, Another Celebration, Take a Bow, and I'm All Right. You can hear how the 5 really good, great songs have nuances, have differences. And these other 5 all kind of have the same sound. Repetitive to a point, and I hate to say this, repetitive to a point, just the sameness kind of drags them all down. Now, I will say that the closing track, Better Than You, it's a little poppy, but at least it's catchy compared to track 9, Waiting. Those final 2 songs, you can hear the pop tendencies of Wolfgang Van Halen kind of leaking into the Mammoth sound a little bit. Is this a sophomore slump? No, I'm not going that far. The album is still really, really solid, and you should check it out and listen to it. It's just, again, the bar was set so high with Mammoth WVH, the first album. Any of us who were pretending that somebody could match that, we were fooling ourselves. I think also he is dealing still with the specter of his father and his band, because this is what happened with Van Halen. But the difference is Van Halen 1 set a bar that was so incredibly high, you never ever thought the band could reach it again, and they came out with Van Halen 2, and by God, they nearly did. They really came up with an unbelievable follow-up, and then the third album, same thing. So this is what Wolfgang Van Halen is fighting. This legacy he's fighting. We're not expecting him to sound like Van Halen. On his own, create his own sound, that's fine. But you set the bar high with the first one. A significant but not disastrous drop from the first to the second. I think he needs to take time. Go out there with Metallica, rock the house internationally, and take some time off. I never say this. I usually want my artists, my bands, my performers to get back in the studio to give me new music. But in this case, I think Wolfgang Van Halen needs to step away once he's done touring, because he has had a just ridiculous, frenetic touring schedule ever since the first album came out. He needs to take some time. He's getting married. Take some time off once the Metallica tour is done. And he's headlining a handful of dates with Mammoth as well. Take some time off. Relax. Reflect. Get into the vaults, the Van Halen vaults. Work on that. I would be fine if we didn't hear from Mammoth WVH in terms of a new album for a couple years. Maybe this was rushed. Maybe this one was rushed. Again, still worth your time, but not as good as the first. Finally, one new song this week to review, a personal favorite band of mine. We're going to talk, in segment 3 about The Rising. A little spoiler for you. Bruce Springsteen, of course, put out The Rising kind of as a response to 9/11. Wilco, new album coming out. First single is called Evicted. Now, Wilco, as I bring this all back around, Wilco's most famous for the phenomenal album, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. And I've already been pimping Brian Setzer. Now, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot should be a little bit more well-known than Brian Setzer's The Knife Feels Like Justice, but if you have never listened to Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, get out there and listen to that album. Now, what I will say is, as we review Evicted is more typical Wilco. Alt country. Friend of mine said it kind of reminds him a little bit of the Traveling Wilburys. I can see that. Jeff Tweedy, the leader, primary songwriter for Wilco. Very dry sense of humor. Droll kind of vocals, but you take them as they are a very solid, entertaining band. But Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, they went off the beaten path and tried some different sonic experiments, and I'm usually not big on that, but in the case of Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, it worked beautifully. And it is a scary album when you consider the fact, you look at the album cover, it's Twin Towers. Not the Twin Towers, but it is Twin Towers on the cover of the album that was set up months and months before the album came out. There is a song on the album called Ashes of American Flags. How creepy, how prescient is that? So again, I cannot stress more. Segment 1, it was Brian Setzer. Here in segment 2, revisit. Go back in time. Go back 20 years, revisit Yankee Hotel Foxtrot by Wilco. Now, the new song, as I mentioned, has a little bit of a Traveling Wilburys feel, but this is typical Wilco for me. Over the years, as I've listened to them, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot was an anomaly in a great way. A diversion off the beaten path in a great way for them. Wilco has now settled back into their usual sound, their usual groove, and there's nothing wrong with that. Evicted is very cool. I heard the title initially and I thought, oh boy, don't tell me this is going to be some kind of a political statement about homelessness. Are we going to do John Mellencamp, The Eyes of Portland? Are we doing that again? Luckily, of course, again, Jeff Tweedy, much smarter than that. Not saying John Mellencamp's not smart. But Evicted is, of course, more of a catchy, poppy, sweet love song. Evicted from your heart. There you go. So check out Wilco's new song, Evicted. That's going to do it for Breakdown. Hope you enjoyed it. Almost maxed out, full 30 minutes here. And it's going to be happening on Breakdown for the next month, probably. With the Hive's new album coming out, with all the concert reviews we've got throughout the month of August. Drop me a line. Let me know what you think of the new Mammoth album, of the new Wilco song. You can do it on our podcast page. You can do it on our Facebook page. Whatever works best for you. Doc Brown tapping his toes, fingers, pointing at me, gesturing for me to get in the DeLorean. It's time for I Want to Go Back. Coming up after a quick promo. Back in time, back in a minute. All right, now that we've looked at the current state of music in our breakdown segment, it is time to climb into the DeLorean and travel back in time to look back at moments in rock and roll history, birthdays, deaths, anniversaries of song and album releases. It is time for I Want to Go Back, our tribute to Eddie Money. Stay tuned. And as always, we're on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcasts. All right, everybody, we're climbing into the rock and roll DeLorean, getting ready to head into the rock and roll time stream with Doc Brown. We've got the car fired up to 1.21 gigawatts. It is time for I Want to Go Back, our tribute to Eddie Money. Anniversaries of classic album releases, birthdays, and moments in rock and roll history. But you guys know this is the time each and every week on the podcast where I have to take care of some business. First up, you have obviously found us somewhere, but you have options. We should all have options. That should be mandatory in every aspect of life. Like a McDonald's menu board, you should have options. Would be nice if the options were a little less expensive. Have you seen how much it costs now to buy a couple double cheeseburgers and a McChicken? Oh, it's ridiculous. But I digress. You have options here on the Fortress of Rock as to where you can listen to us. Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon, Audible, iHeartRadio, and for just a few more weeks, we are losing our beloved Stitcher. Also, do not forget to check out the Facebook page each and every weekend. Couple fun things that we always do. Tonight, right around the same time this episode posts, we will start the Weekend Rock Project. This weekend, we ask for your favorite rock songs involving telephones. So pick a song with phone, telephone, call. We'll even take that in the title. Check out the Facebook page to see the 2 picks that I started everything off with. And then, of course, Sunday is our New Music Sunday, where I post a brand new video. Could be a lyric video, a visualizer, as the kids call it, or an actually fully fledged produced video of a new song that we most likely talked about here on the Fortress within the last week or two. So check out New Music Sunday in 2 days. Of course, I like to acknowledge the sources that I use for some of these story ideas, but keep in mind, I embellish, I tell you what I think and what I feel about the stories. Those opinions are mine and mine alone, but the nuggets, the core of some of these stories, especially in this segment as well as segment 1, come from thisdayinmusic.com, ultimateclassicrock.com, and of course, the Van Halen News Desk. So let's get into rock and roll history, shall we? Let's start off with birthdays. August the 11th, 1968. Kind of a theme, a loose theme going on here. Forgotten guitar heroes. We talked about Brian Setzer in segment 1. How about Charlie Sexton? He had a great solo album that I remember. It's buried in my ridiculously large collection. But Charlie Sexton had just an unbelievably fantastic solo album to his name, of course, known most for the song Beats So Lonely. Charlie Sexton, who was supposed to be the next young guitar god, never quite got there. Still younger than me. Charlie Sexton, born on this day in 1968. Born August the 11th, 1954. Joe Jackson. Again, not up there in the upper echelon of music stars, rock stars of all time, but he had his moment. Of course, Is She Really Going Out With Him? Stepping Out. The album Night and Day was a big hit. Most of us would kill to have one moment like that, one album that took off, that was a huge hit. So happy birthday, Joe Jackson, born on this day in 1954. August the 11th, 1950. Guitarist for Iron Butterfly, Eric Braun, was born. One of the most interesting moments in rock history, the ultra long, ultra heavy In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Now, personally, not one of my all-time favorites, but I gotta respect it for what it accomplished, what it did to push hard rock and heavy metal forward. August the 11th, 1949. A guy who I'm not a big fan of, but I still think he's underrated in the annals of rock history. I know, kind of contradictory there. Eric Carmen. I almost said Eric Clapton. Oh my God. No, he's just trash. You guys know how I feel about Eric Clapton. Eric Carmen, of course, lead singer for the Raspberries, and had a very solid solo career. probably most recently, most well known for, I believe, Go All the Way was on one of the soundtrack albums for either Guardians of the Galaxy 1 or 2. But Eric Carmen had a little bit of a sneaky, successful career. Made a lot of inroads into the history of rock and roll. Look him up, read about him, and see just how successful and popular he really was. Eric Carmen, not Eric Clapton. My bad. I just recently listened to Molly Hatchet doing a cover of Layla. So that's probably why Eric Clapton is still on my brain. We are talking about Eric Carmen, born on this day, August the 11th, 1949. And then finally in birthdays, August the 11th, 1943, a band that I kind of got into later on in life. Again, one of those bands that was big before I really got into music in the mid-70s. Jim Cale was the bass player for The Guess Who. The Guess Who have an amazing discography, some unbelievable songs. Again, I've discovered them later on in life. Jim Cale from The Guess Who, born on this day in 1943. So let's move on to anniversaries in the world of rock and roll. On this day, August the 11th, 2002, The Rising from Bruce Springsteen was the number one album in the U.S. Now, of course, this album was the Boss's response to 9/11. I'm not a big fan of Springsteen as a person. Admire the hell out of him as a songwriter and an artist. Again, very interesting relationship that I personally have with Bruce Springsteen, and I can't stand some of the stories I've heard about him, some of the news reports I've heard about him, and of course, the fact that he gouges his fans. He's getting right up there with Don Henley in terms of gouging fans when it comes to ticket prices. Now, in terms of his albums, I kind of compare Bruce Springsteen to Pearl Jam. Hall of Famers, definitely. Again, in my Hall of Fame, definitely, both of them. But the comparison between the two comes from the fact that they're still fairly prolific, although Pearl Jam has really slowed down here recently, not putting out nearly as much new stuff as they were. Springsteen's still churning out stuff. Yes, sometimes it's cover albums, but Pearl Jam and Bruce Springsteen have a tendency to hit the bullseye let's say every third album, roughly. Every third album is a really fantastic, solid, near classic effort. As they find their way, they feel their way through the minefield that is modern rock and roll. And The Rising was one of those albums from Bruce Springsteen that hit the bullseye. A great, great album. Haven't listened to it in a while. So the fact that this popped up on my research for episode 104, maybe it's time to revisit The Rising. Doing almost a complete 180 in terms of tone, let's say. August the 11th, 1984, Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. was the number one single in the U.S. I liked Ray Parker Jr. before this. He had some great songs with Radio, R-A-Y-D-I-O, specifically Jack and Jill. So I knew of Ray Parker Jr. before he got the gig to sing the theme song for Ghostbusters. And of course, the movie was a huge hit. The song was a huge hit. Who you gonna call? But researching the background of the song Ghostbusters, I found out something new. And I love it when this happens because it's probably going to be new to a lot of you as well. Did you realize that Ray Parker Jr. was sued by Huey Lewis? Huey Lewis claimed that the hook, the riff in Ghostbusters was too similar to his song, I Want a New Drug. Settlement, of course, out of court. Big day for the Beatles, August the 11th. Specifically the year 1964. The Beatles started recording the album Beatles for Sale in London on this day. But overseas, here in the United States, the very same day, the film A Hard Day's Night was released, yes, here in the U.S. And then finally, let's go from one all-time Mount Rushmore legend in rock and roll to another. August the 11th, 1956, the double-sided hit single from Elvis Presley, Don't Be Cruel and Hound Dog, was released, was one of the most popular, still to this day is one of the most popular record-breaking singles ever released in the rock era. So that'll do it, kids. Doc Brown's pulling the DeLorean back into the fortress. We're pulling up the drawbridge over the moat, filled with, of course, barracudas. What else would we have? Shooting sharks from Blue Oyster Cult, maybe? I'll have to think about that. But definitely barracudas, filling the moat around the fortress of rock. One more segment left, of course. As we look ahead, look into the future through the rest of August and September for what is coming up here on the Fortress of Rock. I Want to Go Back is done. Wrap It Up is next. One last promo break, and I'll be right back with you. Well, we hope you enjoyed our trip back in time, looking back at the anniversaries, the classic moments in rock and roll history. But of course, the DeLorean works both ways. So now we have to move forward. The last segment here, as always, on the Fortress of Rock with me, the Maestro Kevin Crane. Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. It's all about the future. What's coming out here in the next month or two? What songs? What albums? What concert tours? That's why we call it Wrap It Up. Thanks to the fabulous Thunderbirds. Thanks to you for hanging out. Here comes our final segment. All right, time to wind things down, kids. We can see the end of the road for this week from here. The light at the end of the tunnel, episode 104, August the 11th, 2023. Of course, I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. This fourth and final segment, of course, we like to call Wrap It Up, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds, where we look ahead coming weeks and months and what you can expect here on the Fortress. And wow, have we got a lot coming up in the next few weeks. A lot of concert reviews. I promised you this months ago. I told you this was going to happen. So far, so good. Everything is falling into place. Next week, I will have my review of Godsmack and Stained live in Noblesville, Indiana. I will have my review of the brand new album from The Hives, The Death of Randy Fitzsimmons. And I should have a bonus concert review for you. It's going to be close. I think it'll work. If we don't do it next week, definitely in 2 weeks. Extreme and Living Color from Gary, Indiana. All that next week on The Fortress of Rock, episode 105. In 2 weeks, still not done. Still not done with the live stuff. Another double concert review for you. In 2 weeks, episode 106, you will get Nickelback live in Noblesville. And you will also get the double headlining show, also in Noblesville, featuring ZZ Top and Lynyrd Skynyrd. Yes, all of that coming up in 2 weeks on the Fortress of Rock. In 3 weeks, episode 107, I will get one of the bucket list shows checked off my list. You will have a review live of Sum 41, Simple Plan, and The Offspring. Cannot wait to finally see The Offspring live in concert. That will be on September the 1st. And we still have more live music coming for you in the month of September. We're not even close to being done, kids. Not even close. New music in the coming weeks. We talked about the new Dokken album coming out in October. We will have a review next week for you of their brand new song, Fugitive. We're still kind of looking at some point in time reviewing Paul Rodgers' newest song off his upcoming new album. The song is Take Love. And yes, I know I keep promising Pretenders. I keep promising a catch up with Peter Gabriel. Once we get through the next 3 episodes with all of these concert reviews, I will settle things down and go back, catch up on the live music. We still have to review Act 3, Disc 3 of Autumn by the Smashing Pumpkins before we review them live in concert. So, jam-packed month and a half coming up here for you, for me, for all of us here on the Fortress of Rock. So as I bid you adieu, I will leave you with the words of wisdom that I always like to, even though I don't like the man who wrote the lyrics and sang the song. Love the one you're with. Enjoy the rest of the summer. It is gone before you know it. It feels like it has just flown by. I cannot believe we're already in mid-August. It's ridiculous. For those of us who live in the Midwest, the upper Midwest, we're only about 3 months away from the nastiness settling back in for a nice 5-month run, which means no concerts, but at least that will give us time to catch up maybe on Peter Gabriel and the Pretenders, right? So there you go. Love you guys. Have a great, great weekend. Again, I will be at Godsmack and Stained in Noblesville, Indiana this weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Hopefully you're seeing some live rock and roll, or at least doing something fun, checking out a cool movie, whatever it is that grinds your gears, that makes you happy, do it. I'm the Maestro. I'm out.